to Presently Presents.
It's not about the agency that you sign with, it's about the agent you sign to, the individual. I'm a big believer in that. So that agency's tiny, but that person is so passionate about you. Go with them. Don't go with the big one where they're a bit like, we will take you because, you know, we're looking for a capital presenter, but we're not that excited. Speaking from experience on the agent side, like, you know, when you have that spare time and you have 6 or 7 clients and you're like, right, who am I going to work on? The one that you gravitate most naturally towards almost comes easiest. So
Today's Presently Presents guest is a radio presenter and DJ who has managed to get some incredible gigs despite being relatively new to the game. Starting on community radio just under 2 years ago, she can already be heard covering on one of the leading radio brands nationally, as well as previously hosting on BBC Local Radio. She's great at creating her own opportunities via making her own content, and last year launched the series Gigs on the Go, bringing different artists to their gigs in a fun interview format with the likes of Wes Nelson and Katie Baser. Today's Presently Presents guest is Lydia Rodford.
Oh, that was so lovely. That was so lovely. I was literally sat here like smiling, like, oh my gosh, that is such a nice little bio. Thank you. And a nice
there we go. You can put that on your website and all that.
Bastard.
So tell us, how did you get into this industry?
Wow.
Like, from the early days, how long have you been doing it? Because in my mind, you've not been doing it that long. Because I remember you joining Riverside, the community radio station. But what was the lead up to that?
I think a lot of people say that to me. I think a lot of people, like, from other stations and stuff. But a lot of people, I saw someone from Kiss last week. Same with Capital, like everyone's a bit like, where have you come from? So I think it's definitely helpful to give the context of sort of my experience and stuff like that. But definitely from a talent side, it's probably only been the last 2 years. So going back all the way to the beginning, I guess it started when I decided I wanted to train as a dancer. So I'd always done dance. I went to a performing arts college called Wilkes Academy, which kind of specialises in commercial, which is very much like, well, it doesn't really. It specialises in everything, but it's known now for commercial, which is very much like music video, that kind of stuff, really fun, upbeat dance. Also did musical theatre, also did singing, also did acting. I was so bad, like so bad. I can't tell you how awful I was. Like if any of the teachers or students was to see this or anyone else, they'd just be like, she was awful. Like I'd literally...
Oh no, I'm sure.
No, babe, I would sit in the corner in ballet and be like, I refuse to dance. Like
Okay, well, that's not great.
It wasn't great. You don't want to follow that. But what I sort of found was kind of like my voice. I always managed to, I think, somehow be the teacher's favourite, but yet not partake in any of the classes. So I sort of had a little bit of the gift of the gab. Anyways, got to the end of the year, we all signed with an agent that everyone was with in our 3rd year. And I was a bit like, I don't know if I want to do this.
Like a dancing agent, was it?
Yeah, sort of. She was a musical theatre agent.
Okay.
So she sent me for a couple of auditions, which were great and stuff like that. And they were good fun. And I got one audition for Morella, which is a cruise line formerly known as like Thompson. And it changed everything. So I got that in February. I got an 11-month contract to travel with them as what is called an entertainment host, which is basically like, think of like Redcoat Butlins. Like that's the easiest way to do it. Oh my gosh. If I could give advice to anyone that wants to be a presenter, go and do a cruise ship contract. I learned skills that I didn't even know were like possible with presenting. I think it's really hard to like train as a presenter. There isn't really an avenue to, like, you just have to ask questions and connect with people and stuff like that. I cannot express how much like silly things, right? Like I always think this is a secret that no one really knows. When you're interviewing someone, especially in like a vox pop style format, most people, if you were stood here, right, most people would speak like that. And they call that a cold shot. Whereas what you should do, you should take it in your other hand and put your hand behind their back, and then it's always warm. Stuff like that I learned because you're interacting with a live audience. Like that's just one of the really
like little tips,
really small things that make those shots in those big moments when you're, I don't know, hosting the Brits or whatever, and you're interviewing an artist versus like, do you know, it's stuff that you just never know about unless someone was to tell you. And it was amazing learning how to react with a live audience, figuring out what lands, what doesn't land. Like interacting with people, traveling the world, saving all the money. Like, it was the best thing I've ever done. So for that company, the two companies that tend to hire people, if anyone's like, that sounds like a bit of me, are TED Group and Peel. They're the two. And mine was an open audition. My agent did send me, but it was an open audition. Anyways, so I did that, the most incredible 11 months. They asked me back to be an assistant cruise director. I was 19. And that
Wow,
was,
you were so young.
I know, I was 19. So that was like a big like moment in like, whoa, do I go and do this or do I not? And although it seemed amazing, I was a bit like, I don't really see the rest of my life on ships, because a lot of people tend to get a bit stuck. And I wanted
Quite an
to,
intense lifestyle as well, like being on a boat for like long months
yeah,
at sea, right?
it's tough. Yeah, it's definitely tough. And it challenges you. Like, we had 1 week off, we worked 7 days a week, but like, you don't work all the hours, but you're living in it. It's like its own little, I can't even explain it. It's like its own little world in itself. Like, the home didn't matter. I can't explain it. Like, you were in a little island. Anyways, I get excited because I just can't express to people that like want to do sort of what we're doing, and you have also done so successfully, is like that it's so hard to get that training. So if you're at the start of that journey, I massively recommend it. Anyway, so decided not to go back. Got a bit sidetracked, ended up going traveling off the back of it. Sort of did a couple of jobs here and there. Completely got sidetracked for about a year, and then COVID hit. And I got a corporate job. Now, the context to that is my dad used to be really senior in a talent management agency. So he looked after people like Ant and Dec, Holly Willoughby, Philip Schofield, like all of that kind
The
of
big
thing.
ones.
Yeah, the kind of the really amazing agency, and he is incredibly talented, and is also always very happy to kind of like take calls or advice or anything like that if that's ever of use. But yeah, so he was like, COVID literally hit. I came back from Thailand and we went into lockdown. I was like, oh my god, I'm not going to be able to make any money, like no one's hiring. And he was like, well, actually, we need a team assistant, do you want to join? So I joined there as a team assistant, and I stayed at that company for 2 years, and that was amazing. So I assisted like Vernon Kay, Marvin Humes, Michelle Humes, like some amazing talent. Like, the level of exposure was
Yeah.
like,
Was that really good for like kind of subconsciously absorbing how to kind of do well in this industry? If you're seeing like these great presenters,
yeah,
was it quite a good way of being like, okay, well, I know that this is how they kind of book for this, like, well, this is what they're
yeah.
looking for.
Yeah, I think so. I think you said it at the start, and it sounds awful for me to say, but you worded it so perfectly. Like, creating those opportunities. I think sometimes it can feel really tough to be like, this is what I want, but how do I get there? And actually, I think the most valuable part of that job was like, oh, okay, so if I want to speak to someone at this company, this is how I do it, or that's the contact. Like, it was almost like 2 years of networking, if that makes sense. That's how it was. And not even networking because I was so junior and this company was so huge, but just being like, right, that person heads up that person, that subconsciously 100%. And those 2 years were so valuable, but because the talent was so like elite, I didn't necessarily feel like I was like being like, I'd like to do that, because what they were doing was on another level. Do you know what I mean? Like, these
Yeah, it'd
huge
be like you
companies.
being you're too new for that at the time. Like, it's
Yeah.
not where you were at your career then. It's like you'd be a small fish in a big pond kind of vibe.
Exactly. Anyways, and then a couple of things happened, and obviously it was amazing for my dad to kind of give me that foot up. And what I will say is, although like I'd love to sit here and say, and I think the level of exposure I've had my entire life to talent has probably been much more than anyone else, and that's massively, massively helped me. But my dad's always been very, very adamant that he won't. There's almost like at one point we even debated, when I started doing all of this, like me having a different surname, just so there was no association with the
Oh,
two of
wow.
us. Yeah. So we did debate doing that. So he's been very, very harsh. He's a great dad, but harsh is probably quite a good word. If he watches this, he'll probably laugh. But for example, I remember saying to him, right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go and be a presenter. And he was like, you won't be able to do it. Like, you will not be able to do it. Like, there's no way. And I'm like, now, like, we laugh about it and stuff, but he's always been very much like, no doors ever. The only door that was ever opened was when COVID hit, and he said, "You can come and be a
Gave you
team
a
assistant."
yeah, so you can't go to him and be like, "Oh, Dad, have you got any contacts at
No,
blah, 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 get me
no,
in there." No, he just wrote,
no
he said, well,
way.
that's quite good because it's like, he's not letting you just have it handed on a plate. He's like, because he
Exactly.
probably could help you out a bit, but he doesn't want to like give you that. He wants you to work it for it on your own, which I quite
Sure.
respect.
Yeah, and I do too, like to a degree. Like, you know, there are certain celebrities that have had, and I get that my dad's not in the public eye, but he's got the knowledge of the kind of manager. Basically, he was a glorified manager on a really senior level. He's got that knowledge. So I'm sure some doors could have been opened. I am grateful that they weren't, because then I feel like you can sit here humbly and say, oh my gosh, the experience and the exposure, amazing. But actually, it was all off of my own back, or at least trying to. But that definitely has had a massive help in terms of the knowledge of who to go, what to go to, where to go, etc. So that leads me on to, at that point, I'd done 2 years at YMU, which is what the company was called. And I was a bit like, I feel like, you know, I want to go and now like carve out this path for myself. Like I was really enjoying being a manager. You know, I really wanted to try and like make a bit of a name separate to the company that my dad worked at. You know, like I'd learned enough skills. So then I started to apply for some other jobs, and the main company that I loved and really admired and still do and have nothing but amazing things to say about them is a company called Insanity, who are a talent management company. And although they have the very elite level talent, the kind of Maya Jammers, Jordan North, Sam Thompson, Roman Kemp, all of those top level talent, they also have a lot of development talent. Like I worked across a guy called Will Najovu, who I loved working with, who is a presenter on Capital Extra, Molly King, although she's very established. I looked after my own talent, a girl called Cheyenne, who I was quite good friends with from community radio. She's sort of like she's got a series called Grilling. She's a great presenter to check out. So yeah, and then at that point, I think a couple of months in, I started to feel a little bit like, especially when I was working with development talent, I was a bit like, oh, that feels like in touching distance if I really applied myself.
Yeah, it's almost like you're kind of watching other people live the dream you want, and that must have been really difficult.
At that point, I was like, oh, like, is this what I want? Like, do you know what I mean? But you want to do the right service to the talent and to the company, because Insanity were really good to me. They really nurtured me. They were like, we see you being a manager. You know, they really, and from Andy, the CEO, right down to everyone in the team, it was a family. You know, I loved working there. So it sort of pulled on my heartstrings as well, because I was like, this is the type of company you could stay at forever, for years. You know, anyways, and it got to the point where more days were coming up where, at that point, sorry, when I was at Insanity, I started in like the summer, and then I think Christmas I went away, and that's when I was like, I think I need to maybe scratch this itch a bit. And that was when I was like, Riverside Radio, let's get back into doing a little bit more. So there is so much before that, but I guess at that point, my brain sort of switched and was like, I do think I want to properly give this a go.
Yeah, I suppose like no one knows about your pre-bit as much, because I've been following you since probably early on in your Riverside days, and I don't
Yes.
think you've got a lot of that past stuff on your
No,
socials.
nothing.
Like I remember you post more now, but back in the day you didn't used to post much. So I remember thinking like, where the hell has this girl come from? She's like, one minute she's like doing Riverside, the next minute she's, you know, doing all these other things which we'll come on to. But I was like, how has she managed this? Like, what is her secret?
Yeah, I definitely think like, look, you can't get lost in that social like narrative. I do it too. We're all capable of it. And I think that like, you know, people will portray what they want to portray. Like, you know what I mean? Like context, like literally real life context. The last 2 days, I filmed a load of stuff. It didn't film. It's been a nightmare. Like a load of stuff. Like there's, I feel like people portray what they want to portray. And I think, you know, you can't get wrapped up in that, because we're all, you know, it's all smoke and mirrors, and lean into that because that's what we're doing and it's our job. But don't let that completely consume you, because I promise you behind that layer, there's so much more to the story. So yeah, but you're right. I think at that point I made a conscious effort. I spoke to Insanity. I said, like, I love it here, but I also love doing like radio, and I'm going to do this community thing. And they were really supportive. So then I started doing that, which would have been this time 2 years ago.
It was. I stalked your Instagram to try and work that out from my bio. So yes, it was 2 years ago in about 10 days time.
Great, thank you, amazing. Oh, that's going to pop up, and I'm going to think of you now when it's like notifications.
Oh.
So yeah, 2 years ago. But I had done, again, sorry, I'm jumping around all over the place.
No, it's fine.
When I was at that company that was team assistant for, my dad's company. I did something called Shoreditch Radio, which was really, really great. But at the same breath, like it wasn't as well run as Riverside. I do like massively hats off to Riverside. I felt like it was very, very well structured. I knew what I needed to do. I knew where I needed to be. I knew how to execute that well. Do you know what I mean? I knew what my role was, sort of thing. Anyway, so I had done Shoreditch Radio. Yeah, joined Riverside, met my lovely friend Simon, who I am still like literally thick as thieves with. I felt so privileged to have met the people that I did at Riverside, like from Jason, who ran the station, who opened doors, as you know, from hosting events and stuff like that, which was quite near to the cruise ship kind of thing. That was amazing. So I definitely think, again, community radio, and I think the right community radio. I did some stuff with Represent as well, which is a really credible station. So really finding, rather than just going, right, I need to be on a station, where's my closest station within 5 minutes? Almost if it's once a month on a station that feels like it's run like a national or a network station, like picking that was definitely key to kind of the ball rolling, because it was so professional and well structured.
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And also, like, yeah, we can shout out Jason Rossum, who runs a recycle. Obviously, you know, I've been there for a while, and yeah, it's a great station to go and check out. They often look for volunteers.
Definitely. And I feel like it's a really safe space to learn, you know, those 10,000 hours thing. Like I'm still doing it now, as you know, 2 years in, like I'm a long way from 10,000 hours, and that, you know, needed to happen. So did loads with Simon, did the early breakfast show with Simon. Love that. Got to summer of that year. So that was like, so let's say, so it'd be like now to summer, and was really pushing with my local station, my local BBC station. And they offered me a job as a producer. Shout out to Mark Carter, who sort of is, this story all revolves around. They offered me a job as a producer, and I said no, because I was like, I've done the team assistant. I then was a talent assistant. I was like, I'm like, as awful as it sounds, like I really want to be in front of that mic. And I feel like I'm then, even though I'm in the BBC at that point, I'm then, again, my positioning is like back, and everyone thought I was mental, because it was basically a full-time job. So I could have gone from insanity to be a radio producer. And I was like, no, I'm really sorry, but I'm so grateful for the opportunity. And Mark and a good friend of mine, David, at the time, were like, oh my goodness, like you can't, like these opportunities don't come up. But I just knew in my gut. Anyways, a couple of weeks later, I was like, I'm going to make a demo and send it to Mark and just say, and this was the boss of the station that offered me the job, like, look, this is really where my heart's at. But if like that's not an option, then I fully understand. So I made this demo and I sent it to him. And I remember him emailing me back going, what have you done before? And then I sort of, you know, you smoke and mirrors. Oh, I've done Riverside. I'm the breakfast show host on Riverside Radio. Shoreditch Radio breakfast. Like I've done Represent. Like you just mix and match all of these things. And he was like, okay, do you want to read the travel for us? And I was so excited, because I was like, oh my goodness, like just to have a physical voice on a BBC station, like amazing kind of thing. So read the travel on the breakfast show, and that was incredible. And then he emailed me being like, do you want to cover an evening show? Like, this is amazing. Yeah, so that was incredible, and I loved every minute of that kind of process. And Mark and the team, shout out BBC Sussex, BBC Surrey, and then BBC Kent, were all incredible and really, really nurtured me and really allowed space for me to kind of like find my voice, because I can imagine those first shows, like you said, like I'd done like radio at that point. I'd probably done like a week's worth of radio. Do you know what I mean? Like I'd done presenting probably I took as much as I could from the cruise ship, which is why I say about the training, and just put it back in. And then I started doing stuff for them. But then obviously, very unfortunately, if you know local radio, pretty much almost the minute I walked in there, everyone sort of started to get a little bit unsettled, because we knew that cuts and changes were coming. Obviously, as a brand new presenter walking in the door, that basically meant that I was very much probably going to go out as quickly as I came in. And I was only a cover presenter. And that was fine. I think I knew deep down, like, great, I've got this experience, and now I need to go and use it. So it was sort of so then at that point I decided to leave my full-time job, because I was like, I must have been 22.
Oh, were you still at Insanity at this point?
So I'd basically, when they called me up and they said the travel was fine, and when the BBC called me up and said, we do a show for us, I called Insanity and they were amazing. And I was like, obviously this is a conflict of interest. Like, I can't be a manager and then also work for the BBC. I never want to put you in a position, but if I don't scratch this itch at 22, I think I'll forever regret it. And I don't want to put you in a position. Therefore, I'm going to take it upon myself and go. And Andy and Neil and Helen, again, shout out, amazing, incredible company. We're like, no, don't go. Like, just do it once. Let's not make a big song and dance of this. Just do it. Like, and then let's see where we are. And then fortunately, the shows kind of never stopped really. And it got to a point where I remember Hells saying to me in a review, being like, we love you and we want you to stay, but like, I think you might need to make a decision for yourself more than anything. Like, we want to send you on this path, but like, I used up all my holiday on the BBC. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They were just a bit like, come on. Like,
it was kind of time to move on at this point. Yeah.
I think so. And then I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to earn money? And I had a great partner at the time. And he was like, look, give yourself 6 months and see how much money you can make. And I will sort of, because we lived in a flat together, he was like, I'll sort of subsidize. And that was like a real privilege that not a lot of people have. And I know that I sort of couldn't really live at home. So that was kind of the best solution. So I took the leap and I jumped, and I got really lucky with a part-time job that I still do a little bit of now, which is sort of almost from my experience as being a manager, just kind of advising a company and trying to help them bring in and negotiate new deals. That kind of came up on a part-time basis. So that helped tick me along, but also allowed me to focus on the cover work of the BBC, travel, whatever that was, making demos. So at that point, I made it my mission to literally, I remember being like, I will know everyone within the radio world, like every MD of every station, anyone with kind of like any power in quotation marks in the radio world. Like, radio was always and is always my thing. Like, everything else is kind of, I love the radio. I just love the kind
Before you carry on, are you quite good at networking, would you say?
Yes, probably. Yes. I'd like
Yeah.
yeah, because I think there's so much power in knowledge. And I think as long as you communicate, can I have 5 minutes of your time? Right. People are quite receptive to that, especially the radio world, because I think people that love the radio want to bring in the new generation and want to see it grow and want to see it thrive. So honestly, like, my advice on that front is like, what's the worst that can happen? Your email gets ignored. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, asking for 5 minutes of someone's time, like, is really just, like, just go for it kind of thing. Like, how do you find that?
What, like networking generally? I'm quite persistent, and I have a lot of people who know me who say that you're very persistent, because I know a lot of people find it quite tough. So I don't really mind it. I don't really get shy about it. And actually,
Yeah.
it's funny because even my boyfriend, who's not in this industry, even slightly, he'll sometimes be like, oh, I want to email this person about whatever, and I'm like, just do it then. And he's like, well, what? Like, he just doesn't have the same mindset as me. He'll be like, oh yeah, but what happens if do you think they'll think I'm annoying? I'm like, why do you like, just do it? Like,
Yeah,
so I think I'm reasonably good. I have met a lot of people along the way. So yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like you have that same mindset of just do it, because honestly, like, you get ignored. Like, okay, great. Like, do you know what I mean? And also one day you might be in a position of power where, someone comes to you and wants to open that door. And I think, like, you just, like, what you give out, you get back, and that kind of thing. So yeah, I made it my absolute mission. So from Bauer to Global to BBC, anyone sort of with any realm, just sort of, can I have some advice really? And I'm new to the industry, and I'm finding my voice, and like, tell me about your journey and your story, not dissimilar to sort of the conversation that we're having now. And can I come in? Can I make cups of tea? Can I send you my demo? Like, can I get any thoughts? Can I get any feedback? So doing that alongside any cover that came up at the BBC. And then I emailed Global at Capital, which, if I'm honest, is the only station I really, 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 really wanted to be at. Like, that, I'm a pop girl through and through. I'm relatively, like, mainstream. I'm probably ever so slightly, like, in your face. Like, I'm quite loud. So for me, I'm 24, so I haven't got loads of life experience. So for me, talking about like Taylor Swift or like Post Malone or whoever it is, Dua Lipa, like whoever it is feels very natural. And, you know, that kind of high energy thing. It was always, I grew up listening to Galaxy in Manchester, where I grew up. And that I was always like, one day I'll be there, like in the back of my mind. I think, I don't know that it was always here, but I remember my mum saying to me, like, you always used to say as a kid, you'd be on the radio and stuff like that. So,
that's cute.
Which is nice. And it was always Galaxy, or Key 103 was the other one I listened to in Manchester. But yeah, and I emailed them and I just said, look, can I have 5 minutes of your time for a call? I had a call with a guy called Richard Park, who no longer works at Global anymore, but was very, very senior and very sort of well established within the radio world. And he was quite honest and said, I like you, I like your vibe, I like your energy. I think you need to go away and sort of figure out your own voice a bit more, which I think was very valid feedback. That was probably around the summer that I got the BBC. And I just kept knocking, slowly knocking. Hey, can you let me in? Can you let me in? Yeah, I must have sent, and I'd been emailing for 2 years, probably. I remember emailing in lockdown. I've been emailing slowly for 2 years. You know, when you just think you have one of those weeks and you're like, right, I'm going to do it, and then don't, and then you do it. So I was very annoying. I'm sure my bosses would, I should ask them now, my bosses would say. Anyways, eventually they were just like, right, come in for a demo, like enough. And I was just like demo. And everyone was really quite, not brutal, but everyone was like, a lot of people like, you know, go for demos. Like you should try and manage your own expectations. And I'm a big believer in, you know, like what's meant for you. As long as you give 110% and you can walk out that room and say, I gave everything I could of in that moment, prep the best that I could. That was me. I'm proud of that. Like left everything on the table. Then like there's nothing more you could do really. I wouldn't be right if it didn't happen, you know, because you can only give yourself. You can't be someone else. So I did. I went in and did the demo. It lasted 10 minutes, if that, which was mad. Literally. Yeah, it was so fast. And that's again a testament to, you know, it's a huge, incredible commercial entity. Like they've got a lot of people, you know, the people are busy and I needed to get in and get out kind of thing. So I did. And that was just before Christmas. And I got an email the next day from Brent, who's now my boss at Capital. And he said, can we, like, really good to hear your sound. Can we get a catch up in the new year? Anyways, new year comes, we get catch up in, and he's like, I really, really like your demo. And I'm like, amazing. And he's like, now there's about 50 other hurdles to jump through, but the senior direct Capital members like it. So we're going to present it higher. So I was like, okay, right, here we go. This was January of last year, January. So end of January comes. I'm like, hey, Bren, how's the meeting going? He's like, hey, Lids, it's not for another 2 weeks. Like, we'll get back to you. And I'm like, okay. And then February comes and 2 weeks later. And I'm like, hey, Brent, how did the meeting go? He's like, oh, sorry, Lids, the meeting's been pushed back. And I'm like, I chased a third time. And he's like, sorry, Lids, it didn't happen. And I'm like, I have to stop. What will be, will be. Like, if he reaches out to me, he reaches out to me. If not, it's kind of like not meant to be. Anyways, I remember it was a Tuesday evening. I was on air for the BBC. It was about 9 o'clock. So I did the late night cover. And he emailed me being like, hi, Lyd, hope you're okay. Do you have time for a phone call at 9 a.m. tomorrow? And I was like, so I was literally on air for the BBC at the time. And I opened my email. It's like 9 o'clock. I'm literally doing a link and I'm looking at an email. And I'm like, oh, Brent's emailed me. That's weird. It's like 9 p.m. And he's like, hey, Lydia, can you take a phone call at 9 a.m. tomorrow? And I'm like, this is mad. Like, surely, like, you're not going to phone me to say your demo wasn't successful. But it felt like, surely you just send me a polite email and say, like, really sorry. But like, do you know what I mean? So we spoke the next day and he was like, so how are you? Like, it's been a while. Like, thanks for bearing with us. And I was like, gosh, don't be silly. Like, no, all good. Like, things are good. And he was like, so we presented your demo to the board yesterday and they absolutely love you and they want you to be a part of Capital. And I was like, I literally I remember I took the phone call in my car because I was like, I just want to be in a space where like nothing and no, like, do you know what I mean? I just needed to have
no one's interrupting.
Yeah, or like if I burst into tears, like I wasn't going to feel like weird or whatever. And that was it. The rest kind of like went on from there, really. So that was quite a quick process. It was about 2 weeks, and then I started covering. And that's kind of the where the needle shifted, I guess, and everything sort of started to really like get momentum, and stuff like that. But super, super, super grateful for that opportunity, and very much still a year later in exactly the same position of covering. So that whether that's like, overnights, early breakfast, weekend breakfast, late, like whatever that is, probably really anything outside of daytime right now, tend to sort of jump in for the cover, which is amazing. But yeah, that's about it to date, really.
Oh, love it. Well done you. And when you mentioned things sort of fell into place after you got the Capital gig, I know you had an agent and you've got a very good agent. Was that one of the things that kind of came off the back of Capital, or was that something you were already working on?
No, that came off the back of Capital, yeah. So again, because of my experience, and again, the companies I have worked for, obviously I worked as a talent manager. So I was very conscious with wanting to sign with an agent that didn't necessarily know me when I was on the talent side, just because, I was like people's assistant and stuff like that. And I didn't want anyone to feel awkward. So Embassy Saatchi, Merlin, who I'm now with, I just said, can I have some time for a chat and a phone call, sort of filled them in with everything that I had going on. And then they were like, we would love to sign you. So I reached out to them. But again, like I was networking with all the different management companies, or had been. I think they were the only people that I sort of made a beeline for. But the email to Alex, who is now my manager, who's the director, was very, very much, hey, do you have time for like a call? And he was like, well, I'd only take a call if I was looking at signing you. And I was like, well, do you have time for a call? So, and like he very much could have ignored that, but I guess you never would have known had I never have emailed. So yeah, now I'm with them, which is amazing. So that sort of fell into place. Social stuff that fell into place. Like you said, I started that series, which is very much trial and error, very, very much trial and error. One of the biggest things I learned when working with talent is having an IP project, an intellectual property project that you own from a social perspective, really gives you a sense of, when people are like content, and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do. Coming up with a format kind of gives you a bit of something to go back to. It's yours, and you can grow it, and you can look after it, and you can nurture it. So that I'd always wanted to do a series where I interviewed people, and I was like, what about if James Corden and Amelia de Moldenberg had a baby? That was kind of it. Carpool Karaoke is obviously such a successful format, and Chicken Shop Date just works because it's interviewing artists. So I was like, what concept can it be? And I'm still finalizing that format. Like sometimes the videos work really well, sometimes they don't. It's on YouTube. Sometimes they get no views, and that's when you put in so much energy and hard work. That's what I mean about the kind of, smoke and mirrors. That's really demoralizing when you've spent, demoralizing is probably the wrong word, really like deflating when you've spent hours, working on something, and then a TikTok that you've spent 2 seconds on blows. And it's tough, that kind of content side of it. But I definitely think if you'll find yourself with a bit of spare time, I definitely would recommend starting an IP project. Take ideas from things that already exist, just make it your own. Like no one's you. Because a lot of people often say to me, yeah, but someone's doing that idea, or I've seen someone, or I feel like I'm copying them, but they're not you. That format, whatever format you think up, already exists. You are probably just not aware of it. The unique part is you and yourself, So jump into that, take stuff from other people. Don't gatekeep, just go for it, like there's room for everyone in this space. So, but yeah, I definitely recommend starting an IP project, although it is a lot of work. And yeah, it came off of my own back. But yeah,
so it's off the agent. And just because we often talk about agency on this podcast, do you think it's been something that was, I mean, obviously, as we've heard, you didn't have an agent to get you to the point of Capital, but it came afterwards. But do you think it is really important to have one now? Like, what kind of opportunities, like, do you think it has presented to you? But equally, like, if you didn't have one, do you think you'd still be able to do the same things?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I worked as an agent. So I think for me, a lot of people say, oh, they're taking 20% and do that. I really miss that sense of team the minute I went and jumped into this world. Like I'm such a people person. We all are, aren't we, with the work we do? And I really wanted to like have someone that I could like jump off, like, do you know what I mean? Like, hey, what do you think of this? And and, win together. And when you win together. And when you lose together. I really wanted that. Do I think it's essential? No. Do I love my agency? Yes. But things, PR opportunities, probably leverage, being able to have conversations that you can't have. I think until you get to that point where for example, like a network, like you've got a TV show or you've got a network contract, I think that's the point where I would say there it feels like viable this is speaking from an agent's perspective rather than the talent's perspective, because very much most of their job is very admin heavy. It's very invoice. It's very contract. It's very putting meetings in the diary. It's very like that. So will always and forever be the creative and the driving force. And actually, my other thing to that is it's not about the agency that you sign with. It's about the agent you sign to, the individual. I'm a big, big, big believer in that. So that agency's tiny, but that person is so passionate about you. Go with them. Don't go with the big one where they're a bit like, we will take you because, we're looking for a capital presenter, but we're not that excited. Not that anyone's going to tell you that, but just
no. You want to get the vibe that they actually like you and they want to be. They can see your future. Yeah. Absolutely.
Again, speaking from experience on the agent side, like when you have that spare time and you have 6 or 7 clients and you're like, right, who am I going to work on? The one that you gravitate most naturally towards almost comes easiest. So make sure you and your agent are. I'm really lucky. I've got 2, and Maddie, who's sort of my slightly more junior agent, is so hungry, and you can feel that, and it's a long, long, long process, and you got to make sure everything's right. But that energy and being able to have those conversations and not being afraid of them is half the thing sometimes. But it takes time, and I think that people think once you sign to an agent, that's it, all the doors open. I promise you, it does not. It does not change anything. And that this is all coming from an agent's perspective rather than like a talent perspective. So I don't think signing to an agent is essential. I don't think it particularly changes anything.
Good. I think that's be reassuring for people, because I think people do get quite, obsessed with it. So that's a reassuring thing for people to listen to. What do you think is the hardest part about being a presenter?
Constantly feeling like you should be doing something, probably. Do you know what I mean? Like constantly feeling like, I could be doing this, I should be doing that. And I think, again, this is my exposure to talent from a young age. No matter where who you are, where you get to. Let's take Amanda Holden. Let's take Ant and Dec. Maybe I don't know, but like let's take any of those huge presenters. They feel no different to exactly how you and I feel, and that is: could I be doing more? Am I relevant? What's the next thing? Should I be doing more on socials? Was that the right conversation to have? All of these what ifs and maybes. And I think if you can master the art of being comfortable with your own journey and being really supportive of those around you and accepting, like, love seeing you, let's say I love seeing you thrive. Like I love seeing you doing your thing. But just because I haven't got a huge TV break, like you've had so many successful ones, Esme, doesn't mean that I'm not in the place that I should be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like just going on your own journey.
You've had radio breaks that I haven't had. So, I think it's just everyone doesn't see their own wins because they're so worried about the other person's wins, I think. Like I've had it in the past where I've been like, oh, well, I've done this and this, but I find a way to like almost diminish what I've done. Because I'm like, oh, I've done this and this, yeah, great, whatever. But like this person's done this, and I kind of almost don't recognize what I've done as good unless someone else I see who I think is good has done that thing. Does that make sense? Which is bizarre. Like if I, got on something that I admired, let's say, I admired you do Capital, and I was like, right, I'm on Capital now. Then I'd be like, right, that's a good thing, because I know that someone else I admire has done it, and I've seen them go through it. But when it's things that I've done for myself, it's bizarre. It's a really weird. I think the whole industry is an odd thing, being a freelancer, being in this kind of industry where it's easy to take things personally, isn't it? And sort of, I don't know. It's a bizarre one, but I do think you just get used to it and you just stop caring as much. I think the more time goes on, you stop comparing because you just don't care as much. And that's
exactly. And a lot of people say that to me about my socials, with being like a bit carefree, and people, I'm nervous to put that out there. I'm nervous for that. No one cares. And if they do, they have way too much time on their hands. And again, like, find comfort in, I am me, and that is my only uniqueness. Like, let's say, for example, right, everyone's replaceable. At some point, let's say I get a national network slot, at that hopefully all on good terms, someone's maybe moving on or doing something else. If not, and someone's being replaced, let's say, I need to be humble enough to accept that one day someone will do that to me, and someone will do that to you, and someone will do that to you, which is why I say I just think people that gatekeep in this industry, it makes me sad, because I'm not you and you're not me. And that there's power in all of that. And I think once you accept that what that person's doing is amazing, and you will either get there or you'll go a different way or whatever, that's so powerful to find comfort in your, your own journey. Because also if you start comparing, then you're going up the wrong path. It's like, well, am I actually right for your reference capital? Is that definitely my sound? Or am I just going there because that's what I feel like I should be doing because that's what I've seen someone else doing? You get lost in like the noise, and mute people. Like if you struggle to see something and you find it triggering, let's say you find me triggering because it's like, Christ, she's been here 5 minutes, mute me. That doesn't necessarily mean you can't support me, but don't damage your own personal headspace for something that is irrelevant. Do you see what I mean? That's my opinion. Protect your own energy is my opinion.
Yeah, and it's not wrong for you to, like, you can, as long as you can acknowledge that if you're feeling negative towards someone because they're doing something that you want to be doing, as long as you can acknowledge that that's a you problem, not a them problem, I think that's the main thing. Like, definitely. I personally don't really, these days, I think when I was younger I did care more, but I mean, honestly, I've been freelance for so long now, I don't really care as much. But when I was younger, I would have these people like, oh, I want to be doing this and this, but that's not their problem. Like, I'd still try and comment on everything they do and support them, because it's still good for them. Like, well done them,
Exactly. And let it inspire you rather than hinder you, And I think that honestly, it just comes back to like, they are not you and you are not them, and that at the end of the day, like, I think there's room for everyone and anyone in this industry, and I'd like to think that everyone is supportive. I'd like to think I'm always the first person to say, here's this email, or this is my advice, or whatever, because like, knowledge is power, and hopefully we kind of all share that. This pool of presenters or emerging presenters is really small, so like, let's help each other figure that out, because there's so much space for us all.
Totally, and everyone's different. So, well, before we let you go, what would be your advice you'd give for somebody who's watching, who's maybe, or at any point of their career, either they've just started or they've never done any presenting before? What would you say to those people who kind of want a career like yours?
Network. Be loud, be bold, be brave, just go for it. Because, I have this awfully morbid saying, but I will say it for the purposes of this. One day we're all going to be gone. We're all going to be gone, and life's going to be over. And when you're lying there, are you going to be thinking, oh, that email I should have sent back in 2024? Imagine if I'd sent that, and imagine what could have come of it. No one cares. So do you, be loud, be proud, make it your business to know every single person within the entertainment space, within the radio world, within the TV world. Make it your business. These worlds are small. That takes 6 months if you do it properly. Knowledge is power. Once you know that, you can figure out your route and cleverly worm through it. But yeah, I think be bold and be loud and go and grab what you want, because if you really, really want something, you will absolutely make it happen. That's my advice.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's like a TED talk. I feel like you're an inspirational speaker.
I wish my words and my metaphors and all my lines don't make sense, but
no, I love
hopefully that's that.
Where can people find you if they want to see you on socials and kind of keep up to date with what you're doing?
Yeah, probably best way. And look, it goes without saying, I'm always happy to chat, to talk, to, I think especially from the talent manager side, if there are people that are like, I really want to sign to an agent, but I don't know how, or I feel like I should, or I'm not getting anywhere, I'm really, really happy to help on that side, as well as, this is my thoughts on the presenting side. So you can find me at Lydia_Rodford on Instagram and TikTok, would be the best place to touch base.
Gorgeous. Lydia, thank you so much. Hopefully we'll see you in a full-time slot on Capital one day. That's what I'm seeing it happening.
A girl can dream, humble enough to dream, like you said. I'm still doing my 10,000 hours. So, but a great space to kind of learn my 10,000 hours. But thank you. I appreciate you. Appreciate all your kind words as well. And for having me on. I love Presently, and it gave me good exposure to kind of what jobs were out there when I first started. So, and initially it was a really nice space when you said, do you want to come on? I was like, wow, what a full circle moment. So, can't wait to see you with a full-time slot on a full-time TV show very, very soon.
Love you. See you soon. Thanks. Bye.
Love you. Lots of love. Bye.